Part 313. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3129. As soon as the list was posted, Zhou Lizhong and Zhou Lizhong squeezed in to watch the list. Although there were not as many candidates for the Beijing Mingjing examination and Jinshi examination, there were more candidates plus their family members. Everyone crowded in noisily. On Tuesday, Lang's hair was about to fall apart. He was pushed by the people behind and almost ran into the announcement wall. But it also allows him to see the announcement as soon as he looks up. Just 12 people, divided into two lines, how long can it be? He looked down directly from the first place, and when he saw the bottom, his eyes widened slightly. When Zhou Lizhong and Zhou Lizhong were still trying to squeeze in, he shouted, "Fight, hit, big head, you passed the exam." Really, Zhou Lizhong, who was caught in the crowd, wanted to squeeze forward, but couldn't squeeze in. He wanted to jump up and look, but it was difficult to move when he was caught between the left and right. He could only stand on tiptoe hard, but only looked at after getting Wu Ying's head. He could only ask loudly, "Second uncle, how many names do I have? Can I pick a good position if I am not in front?" Fifth place. Zhou Lizhong's eyes widened in surprise, and he stopped squeezing in, and began to squeeze out, but it was more difficult to go retrograde, and it took a long time to squeeze out, and half of his hair was loose. Wednesday Lang also squeezed out, his face full of excited red. "Good boy, you can do it." Even the honest man like Wednesday couldn't help but say, "Our Zhou family's children are smart, so, who is this to pick up? Anyway, it's definitely not their father, that's their mother. Well, maybe it's grandparents. After all, my uncle used to be very smart." Zhou Li squinted his eyes with a heavy smile, and said to Zhou Lang, "My aunt said that because we often had candy when we were young, we were smarter than others." "Nonsense, that's sugar, not pig's brain or sheep's brain. How can you be smart if you eat it?" "Zhou Lizhong, third uncle, what does this have to do with pig brains and sheep brains? Can they still be smarter than humans?" Zhou Lang scratched his head in confusion. "Didn't you say that what you eat will make up for it? No matter how smart pigs and sheep are, they are also their heads. If you eat them, you will make up for them." "Zhou Lizhong." He tilted his head and thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "No." Although the little girl was smiling when she said it, it didn't seem like she was lying to us. We are smarter than others and naturally have the credit of our parents and elders, but when it comes to eating, it's because we always have sugar to eat. Zhou Lang was taken aback for a moment. "Then you write to your brothers and sisters and ask them to buy more candy for Wudu." Zhou Lang, who finally squeezed out, touched the loose hair and asked, "What candy?" Zhou Lizhong was taken aback. "Second uncle, why did you become like this?" "Don't worry about it." Tuesday Lang grabbed him and said, "You passed the test, hurry up, let's go back and prepare some gifts. I'll take you to give gifts to the county magistrate. We have to choose a good position." Because Qilai village is a little far from the county seat, Zhou Lizhong borrowed and lived in the Guan family's house during his studies. The Guan family has a yard in the county seat, which was bought for Guanyang to study in the county seat and when he married Zhou Lixin. On Tuesday, Lang and the others just came to see the results. They didn't bring any gifts, but those who brought money were not much. So they went straight to Guan's house and borrowed money from people. The Guan family now lives in Guanyang's cousin, Guan Fan. The couple are now running her dowry restaurant for the eldest sister-in-law Zhou Lixin. They are all in the restaurant at the moment. Lang Yi said on Tuesday that he would borrow money to give gifts. He ran home to get the money without even thinking about it. He took out more than 10 coins and said, "This is not sent back to the village, is it enough? If it is not enough, I will borrow some from the owners of several nearby shops." "Enough, enough," said Tuesday Lang with a smile. "It's not good to give too expensive gifts, and those who don't know think that our quota is bought. Yes, yes, it's not good to give too much. Guanfan thought for a while and said, I heard that the county magistrate loves to drink, and the best wine in our county is Jiananshan. On Tuesday, Lang also wanted to deliver wine, got up and said, I'll go buy it now. He also gave Zhou Lang and Zhou Lishong some money and said, go buy some snacks, fruit boxes. Fabrics are not easy to send, those things are too expensive, and the county magistrate is also a scholar, so please send some pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. Zhou Lishong, second uncle, that thing is more expensive. Then it's the same as a single delivery. You pick it up, hurry up, we have to hurry up, others may have already gone. Guanfan immediately said, I'll go help too. On Tuesday, Lang couldn't ask for anything. They didn't need to buy many things, but they were scattered. One more person to help could save some time. After buying all the things, the three uncles and nephews went to Guan's house to freshen up, and after finishing their clothes, they went to the county government office. There are already candidates and their families in the county government to give gifts to the county magistrate. They are different from the candidates of Cao Fuxiu, Cao Mingjing, and Jinshi. They have a bright future and are also the county magistrate's political achievements. Therefore, the county magistrate usually pays them to eat and drink to celebrate. I hope they have a long journey and remember it in the future. Give back to his hometown and give back to his former parent. And these candidates for the county exam, once they pass the exam, they will be officials in the county government, and they are the subordinates of the county magistrate. As a future subordinate, now there is an upright reason to bribe and give gifts, and everyone will not let it go. Of course, the gifts given by most people are not too expensive, and the salaries of the officials are not high. Although everyone is happy, the gifts they send are limited. On Tuesday, Lang's etiquette is the most precious: a jar of wine, 2 packets of good snacks, 2 pieces of meat, and an inkstone. Others also sent 2 packs of snacks, 2 fruit boxes, 2 pieces of meat and a jar of wine. It's just the difference in wine, and the difference in value. Fortunately, no one paid attention. Everyone looked at the county magistrate anxiously, especially wanting to ask what positions their children could get. In order not to entangle himself, the county magistrate said directly, just follow the results. He paused and then said, everyone goes in for the interview one by one, and I'll assign them according to your director. Everyone looked at each other and didn't have any opinion. So the county magistrate smiled and called them one by one for the interview. There were also the county chief, the county lieutenant, and the chief clerk. Nodded and said, you go down first, I have to ask other people. Although they entered according to their grades, the county magistrates also focused on their assignments. For example, Zhou Lishong, who is good at skills, when he said that he wanted to go to the household, the chief clerk and the county magistrate did not hesitate to draw circles. The magistrate also drew circles, so he passed. Zhou Lishong successfully entered the household in Lujiang County, and then went to the county magistrate to talk about the new grain. The magistrate frowned. New grain? Wheat. But there is still more than half a year before the next season of wheat is planted. No, it's a grain seed. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3130. The magistrate couldn't help but sit up straight. Grain seeds. Jolie nodded his head, and talked about their family's 6 years of experimentation in the capital. He also took out his notebook and said, the current grain seeds are the ones with the best performance at present, my lord, do you want to try it? County magistrate, you are bold enough. Do you know what the consequences will be if you spread such seeds that have not been verified by the imperial court? If everything goes well, it's okay to say, if the grain harvest fails, it's a deadly sin. Zhou Lishong hurriedly said, there aren't many grain seeds either. If you choose some farmers with a lot of fields, 1 or 2 acres of seeds can be allocated to each household. These grain seeds have been tested by us. You know that farming is not just about seeds, the county magistrate interrupted him and said, there is also the issue of wind, rain, and sunshine. Once the wind and rain don't go well, your seeds will never grow no matter how bad the weather is. Okay. But most of the people in the world are ignorant and don't know these reasons. They only think that the harvest is bad because they have changed the seeds. Zhou Lizhong, sir, it's not just about growing new grains per household. If the wind is not good and the rain is not good, then it is not only the new grains that will fail, but the crops will also fail. The people also have eyes and consciences. They are not fools, it's really a matter of wind and rain, who can't see it? What if it's a matter of new seeds? Jolie was stunned, unable to find anything to refute. He could only scratch his head and said, anyway, I believe in the new crops of my family. The county magistrate waved his hand and said, that's just your side of the word, and the previous rice was planted in the capital. Who knows if it can adapt to the soil and water environment of our Lujiang County? I can't let the people take this risk. Zhou Lizhong felt a little regretful and could only suppress the matter temporarily, but as soon as he got home, he said to Zhou Lang, third uncle, the magistrate doesn't believe me, did our family plant all the seeds themselves? Wednesday Lang, you burned it? Although our family has a lot of land, it is impossible to plant all these seeds. In fact, they have already set aside half of the field to plant new grain seeds, and the rest are the seeds left by Wednesday Lang himself last year. Jolie thought for a while and said, persuade the people in the village. Wednesday Lang scratched his head, then I'll talk to the village chief when I get home. On Tuesday, Lang happily came in from the outside, and said to Jolie, I bought a yard at the end of the street, and I can move in when I pack it up. Jolie opened his mouth wide, second uncle, did you really buy a house? He was a little anxious, I won't stay in the county for too long. My sister-in-law said that when the harvest comes out at the end of autumn, I will go back to the capital. What if the new grain cannot be planted? Asked Tuesday Lang. Second uncle, can't you have a little confidence in me? Zhou Lizhong said after he finished speaking, my aunt said that if the new grains can't be grown here, then we need to open some experimental fields here, and then this side will be separated from the capital. There is a lot of planting there, and I have to stare at the fields, so I guess I can't do it in the house. So he will resign, and he will not live in the city, but in the village. After Zhou Lang stiffened for a while, he waved, forget it, then we will live in the future. He said, I bought everything. If we come back late from doing business outside, we will have a place to stay in the county. Zhou Lizhong didn't speak anymore. Tuesday Lang turned his head and said to Wednesday Lang, tomorrow we will go back and call a few people to come and help. Before we are busy with farming, we will clean up the house first. It's not good to always live here at Dia. Wednesday Lang asked, whose county do you buy from? He was puzzled, why would you sell the house at this time? She's, Jolie said, turning his head to Jolie, speaking of which, I have some fate with you. Back then, you followed Man Bao to buy a rooster that was defeated. Zhou Lizhong's eyes widened, Master Shi. Does he still gamble? Where, he just wants to gamble now and he has no money. Zhou Lang shook his head and sighed, how big was the Shi family's family business back then? I heard that it was a little worse than that of Master Bai's family, but now they are all lost. He said, the yard that I bought now is the last yard of Uncle Shi. It was originally lived by his wife and children, but his son is sick and very sick. He needs to ask a doctor for medicine. Many people have borrowed money, but they never pay it back. Oh, and they don't pay it back, so now that the child is really sick, no one wants to borrow him. There is no choice but to sell the yard. Zhou Lizhong was in a complicated mood. He could still remember when they came to the county town to sell candy. When they sold out, they would squat at the street and wait. So they know best that he really loses 9 out of 10 bets. It is true that he loses 9 times out of 10, so they can't understand why he keeps betting even though he knows he will lose. Even the sister-in-law who wanted to buy his cock at a low price couldn't help but persuade him again and again, since your family is not short of money, why do you want to bet on this 1 in 10,000 chance? Besides, gambling is still 9 out of 10 bets. Uncle Shi smiled and said at the time, you guys think it's gambling, but I think it's gambling. The so-called gambling is just like other entertainment. It makes people excited and happy. Since it's all fun, why worry about spending money? But it's not worth the loss, Joe Man said at the time, although he was young, but still serious. Gambling may make people excited and happy, but that is when people can control themselves. Pursue happiness, but get sick. All addictions in the world are a disease. You are still young, and there are many things to pursue happiness in this world. Why do you choose the thing that is most unhealthy for yourself, your family, and the common people? At that time, Joe Man was only 7 or 8 years old, and Zhou Lizhong was not too old, but because his fourth uncle had lost his family by gambling, he was very impressed by these words. He also disliked all gambling industries, including horse racing, etc. Because he firmly remembered his aunt's words, this industry is the most unprofitable thing for himself, his family, and the common people. However, Uncle Shi took this road to the black. Whether it was hitting a wall or falling into a river, he never looked back. Although Zhou Lizhong and Zhou Lizhong sighed, they were not familiar with Uncle Shi, and they didn't have as complicated a mood as Zhou Lizhong. The two quickly discussed what to add to the new house. I have to buy some firecrackers. They all say that the feng shui of the house is not good, so they have to boil some grapefruit leaves to drive away the evil. Jolie regained his senses, nodded and said, I know where there are grapefruit trees in the county seat, and then I will go to someone to ask for some branches and leaves. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3131. At this time, apart from the old leaves of the previous year, the leaves of the pomelo only have new shoots. Zhou Lizhong recently learned a little more about Lujiang County, so he quickly found the pomelo tree. As soon as the owner of the tree heard that Zhou Lizhong was taking grapefruit leaves to get rid of the trouble, he pointed at the leaves on the tree and said, pick it yourself. Zhou Lizhong didn't bring any tools, so he could only take off his shoes and socks, hugged the tree, and climbed up the tree. After a while, he broke off 2 branches, thanked the owner of the tree, and went back happily carrying the leaves. After returning to Jiikao, I encountered a lot of noise at the entrance of an inn in Jiikao, and many people gathered together to watch the fun. Zhou Lizhong passed by and didn't want to look at it, but he stood on tiptoes subconsciously, craned his neck and glanced in. Just as he was about to turn into the alley to go home, he saw the boy who was pushed out by the inn manager and fell to the ground. The middle-aged man hugged the boy and sat on the ground. Jolie gave a heavy meal, stretched out his hand to remove the person standing in front of him, and looked in. He saw that the shopkeeper threw out their luggage with an ugly face, and a woman with a sallow face was holding the luggage in her hand and was also pushed by the staff. Came out. The shopkeeper stood on the steps and said sarcastically, Uncle Shi, it's not that I don't want to live with you, the visitor is a guest, although you are unlucky and your fortune is not good, but as long as you can pay the room fee, I will give you everything that should be given, and I will serve you comfortably, but if you can't afford the money and you don't want to leave, it's too embarrassing for me. The onlookers pointed at Uncle Shi, isn't there a small house? Did you lose the bet again? I heard that Shi Xiaolang was ill. He sold his house to buy medicine to treat his illness. Oh, A house isn't cheap, isn't it? It's all spent. The woman stepped forward with a numb face and reached out to help her son up with Uncle Shi. As a result, the boy fell down completely and had no strength at all. The couple didn't help him up together. Zhou Lishong inserted the pomelo branches and leaves into the belt behind his waist, and stepped forward to help the young man up. When he found that the man was light, he simply slapped him and picked him up. He was about to ask him where to send him, but he was driven from the inn when he thought of him. When I came out, I had nowhere to go at this time, so I simply said, "Let's go." Uncle Shi and Mrs. Shi stared at him blankly. Neither of them recognized Zhou Lishong, but they felt familiar. Zhou Lishong had already left with the person in his arms. After walking 2 steps, he noticed that the person was not following, so he turned to look at them. "Come on." The two hurriedly picked up the luggage on the ground and wanted to follow. The shopkeeper was stunned when he saw it, and immediately rushed up and grabbed Zhou Lishong's arm. "Wait a minute, Lang Jun is their relative?" "That's right, pay back the money they owe me." Bar. Uncle Shi's expression changed slightly, and he said solemnly, "I will pay you back the room fee." "Repay? What do you take back?" the shopkeeper said rudely. "I didn't care about the dozens of pennies since you didn't have a relationship. Now that I have relatives and friends, why didn't I pay back my money?" Although Uncle Shi hadn't thought of Zhou Lishong yet, he didn't want him to suffer, so he said with a cold face, "Who said that I didn't have a relationship? Are you not my old friend?" He looked at the inn behind him, pulled out a strange smile and said, "Speaking of which, you are still renting my house in this inn. In previous years, you always cried and complained that Lujiang County was poor, there were few people, and the inn couldn't make ends meet, so every year you paid for it. Zuzi, I always wiped off the fractional 5 taels for 7 or 8 years. We were good friends at that time." When Uncle Shi said this, the onlookers also remembered, and they said to the shopkeeper, "Yes, although Uncle Shi can't keep his family business, he has no ability to gamble, but he was really generous and helped a lot of people in the past. In the past, people gave you a few taels of silver, what's wrong with you now exempting people from dozens of yuan?" The shopkeeper's face changed, it was very ugly. Jolie glanced at him again, put down the boy in his hand, supported him with one hand, and touched the other hand in his sleeve pocket, took out a string of money and asked, "How much?" The shopkeeper did not speak. Uncle Shi stretched out his hand to stop Zhou Lishong and said, "No, I will pay for the money myself." Jolie pressed Uncle Shi's hand and smiled, "Uncle Shi, don't you remember me? When I was a child, I ate a lot of cocks that you gave away for free. My grandmother used to be in bad health because she often got some from you. Meat, so the body is slowly nourished." Uncle Shi narrowed his eyes slightly. He had never sold chickens, and a few times, he also sold fighting cocks that had been pecked badly. But there is only one person who will buy a fighting cock with him and go back to stew it. His face was suddenly stunned. "You are the child of the Zhou family." He looked up and down, sighed, and asked, "Are you the one called the big head or the one called the second head?" "Zhou Lishong, I am the big head, I have a big name, my name is Zhou Lishong." Uncle Shi nodded slightly, and wanted to speak. Zhou Lishong had already threw the money bag to the shopkeeper, then picked up the young man and said, "Excluding the room fee, the rest of the money will be sent to Guanzai in the alley." After speaking, they strode away. Uncle Shi and Madam Shi hurriedly followed, and then returned to the front of the house they had just sold at the end of the alley. 2 people. Zhou Lishong kicked the door open with a light kick, and Tuesday, who was doing a simple cleaning, turned around and said, "I'm back. Can you pick it up, this is." Tuesday's eyes widened. Jolie smiled and said, "Second uncle, is everything in the house still complete?" Tuesday Lang nodded shyly. Zhou Lishong reported the boy to his original room and let him lie on the bed. Uncle Shi and Madam Shi looked embarrassed. They just sold the house and moved out 2 days ago, but now they are back. Zhou Lizhong went out and said to Zhou Lang, "Let them live here first, I'll go to Ji Shitang to invite a doctor." Uncle Shi hurriedly stopped him and said, "The doctors in Ji Shitang have already read it. We have the prescription here, so we don't need to go to the doctor again. We can just go back and grab the medicine with the prescription." Zhou Lizhong was curious, "Do you have the money to prescribe medicine?" Uncle Shi's expression didn't change much, but his body stiffened slightly and he didn't speak. Although Zhou Lizhong was curious about where the money he had just sold the house had gone to, he still didn't ask, and insisted, "Let's ask the doctor to come and have a look." Having said that, he went out. Zhou Lizhong has grown up, and he is the eldest grandson of the eldest house, so Zhou Lizhong did not object to his decision. When he saw him going to ask for a doctor, he raised a smiling face and greeted Mr. Shi and Mrs. Shi, "The two of you should put your luggage down first. By the way, your room hasn't been moved, but my mother-in-law has tidied up a little, I'll call her now, and you still live in that room." After that, he hurriedly went to the backyard to find Feng and Zhou Lang. The three were cleaning the backyard. When they heard that the Shi family was brought back by Zhou Lizhong again, they couldn't help but stare. "Then who is this house? Of course, it's still ours, but we're not in a hurry to live here, we just give them a place to live for the time being." Tuesday Lang said, "It's also a good thing for the children to repay their gratitude." Back then, Uncle Shi also helped Chen Manbao and a few children. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3132. As soon as Feng thought about it, he no longer objected. "Okay, but let's talk about it first. The main house needs to be lived in by our family, otherwise outsiders will not look like it." "Oh, Mrs. She lives here. It's not easy for Lizhong to live here. Let's talk about it later. There's Mrs. She in front of you, so hurry up and say hello to your younger brother and sister." Mrs. Feng could only pull Mrs. He to entertain the guests. When Zhou Lizhong led the doctor back, Mrs. She was sitting on the chair crying sadly, her voice was almost heartbroken. Mrs. Feng and Mrs. He comforted her and gave her a handkerchief to wipe her tears. Reaching out on the threshold to hold his head, he couldn't help but pause and asked, "What's wrong?" Uncle Shi raised his head and reluctantly stood up against the threshold. "It's nothing, Dr. Lao Zheng is here." Dr. Zheng sighed slightly, shook his head and said, "You're welcome, let's see the patient." Madam Shi also held back her tears, but she couldn't help choking, her body trembled, but she quickly followed them and went into the house to see Shi Xiaolang together. Dr. Zheng was already very familiar with the juvenile's illness, but he still stretched out his hand to catch the pulse, listened carefully, shook his head and said, "I still have to take care of it." Uncle Shi and Lady Shi looked disappointed, but they were mentally prepared and didn't say anything. One went out with Dr. Zheng, and the other stayed to take care of Shi Xiaolang. Madam Shi covered him with the quilt and sat by the bed and stared blankly at him. The teenager also looked at her blankly. He endured it for a long time, and finally suppressed his fear and whispered to her, "Mother, am I dying?" "No, Mrs. She said in a sharp voice, "You must be cured, so how can you not be cured? Don't worry about money, I will go to your uncle tomorrow to ask for money, that's your life-saving money." "Mother," Shi Xiaolang suddenly called out softly, "Don't ask, you and him, don't go back to your mother's house, find someone to marry yourself, this time find an honest one, don't gamble." Madam Shi clutched her chest and wept bitterly, only to feel that the heart in her chest seemed to be squeezed and twisted, and the pain was so painful that she could hardly breathe. Uncle Shi heard the sound and ran in. Seeing that she was kneeling beside the bed, he quickly picked her up and put her on the couch in the outer room. He said to her with red eyes, "Don't worry, I'll go with uncle tomorrow. If you want money, you will definitely get it back." Madam She felt a pain in her heart and wanted to push his hand away, but she was weak and felt that she was not qualified, so she could only lean on the couch without saying a word. Zhou Lishong took a look inside, and then asked Dr. Zheng curiously, "What kind of disease is this?" "Heart disease." Zhou Lishong, then Kaixi Kaija? Why is the heart disease so severe? Dr. Zheng, the heart disease I'm talking about is not that kind of heart disease, but a real heart disease. He said, "Yang deficiency and heart failure, now I can only rely on support. My medical skills are not good, so I can only temporarily hang people's lives." Zhou Lishong thought for a while and asked, "Can you write down the pulse and the prescription? I'll have someone send a letter to my sister-in-law." When Dr. Zheng heard this, he raised his brows. "Of course it can, but the prescription of Imperial Physician Zhou is back. I'll show you the first time." Dr. Zheng was very satisfied, and went to the hall with Zhou Lishong to prescribe a prescription and write a pulse case. "How long has he been sick?" After thinking about it, Dr. Zheng said, "Actually, he was weak since childhood, but at that time his family was rich, he ate well, and lived a smooth life, so his frailty is not worth mentioning. It really got worse 4 years ago. Alas, Uncle Shi basically ruined the family business. After they moved out of the Shi family's mansion, his health got worse and worse. Since last year, he has basically been on bed rest." Ask Dr. Zheng to say that if the Shi family has always been rich and noble, this disease is not worth mentioning. He can live his life in peace and stability. Bad. Dr. Zheng shook his head, feeling that Shi Xiaolang was really unlucky to have such parents on the stall. Yes, including Mrs. Shi. After sending Dr. Zheng away, paying the consultation fee and the medicine fee, after a while, the pharmacist agreed to deliver the medicine, and then went to see the 4 people on Tuesday. He sighed and said, "Miss Shi is really unlucky to have such a situation's mother's house." Feng Shi said viciously, "Not all parents' families in this world are homes. If I say that she can't stand by herself, why else would it be like this?" He spoke for her. She didn't expect her elder brother to be like this, did she? "Fart, who can't count who is in your parents' family," Feng said, "not to mention that money has to be in your hands. Even your husband can't believe it, and he even believes in the brothers in the family. Their family has become like this. Did her mother's family help?" Zhou Lishong was at a loss, and quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "It's nothing, it's just the money we gave us to buy this yard 2 days ago." Madam Shi was afraid that Uncle Shi would take the money and gamble again, so she quietly gave the money to her brother at home, thinking that she would wait until the child needed money to buy medicine in the future. "Take it with the uncle of the Wu family." Zhou Lang shook his head and said, "Who knew that the uncle of the Wu family took the money?" And he turned his head and wouldn't admit it, unless the couple worked together to corrupt him. At that time, she gave it in a hurry, and she was thinking of letting Uncle Wu pay for the medicine. How could she write a receipt or something? At that time, I had to hide it from Uncle Shi again, so no one except her son knew that she gave the money to Uncle Wu. It was her son, and it was only after Uncle Wu left. After all, Shi Xiaolang has a plan. At that time, he said that Mrs. Shi should go and get the money back, but it's a pity that Mrs. Shi didn't go. Zhou Lang shook his head and sighed. Yesterday they went to buy medicine, and Mrs. Shi went to look for it. Uncle Wu took the money, but she didn't get it, and she didn't get it out of the house until she knew it was bad. Zhou Li frowned. "It's just a one-sided statement, there is no evidence. I'm afraid it will be difficult to get the money back." "No, that's what happened to Uncle Shi again." Zhou Yulang shook his head and said, "If an honest person has a deed to sell the house and can't get the money now, it means there is no such thing as a receipt." Ling will also consider Mrs. Shi's remarks as appropriate, but Uncle Shi is notoriously good at gambling. Sigh. Wednesday. Lang and Jolie said seriously, "You are now in the county government office, or you can go to Wu's house with you, maybe you can scare the money out of it. Zhou Lizhong, third uncle, who taught you this kind of thing? Tuesday Lang said confidently, who doesn't know this truth? You don't need to say anything when you go there, just stand aside and show your identity. Before Zhou Lizhong could speak, Uncle Shi had already come out, went straight to the back kitchen, and then came out with a knife. Zhou Li's eyes widened, and he ran out to stop him. Uncle Shi, what are you doing? If you move a knife, it's a big evil. Uncle Shi smiled at him and said, don't worry, I'm just here to scare him, not really. Zhou Lizhong doubted, really? Good night, it's almost bedtime, there's another chapter to make up tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3133. Chapter 3067 Ask for Money. As soon as Uncle Shi turned around, his face became gloomy, and he went straight to the restaurant with the knife in hand. Uncle Wu is drinking and bragging about friends in the restaurant, the money is also sent to the casino if he gave it to him. It's better to give it to me, anyway, it can still enter my stomach. That's good, we can help Hua together, ha ha ha. That's what you said, but Mrs. Shi is also suffering. At the wine table, one person endured it, but he still couldn't hold back, and I heard people say that Shi Xiaolang is still taking medicine. This is your nephew's medicine money. Wu Dalan slammed the wine glass on the table. Brother Qian, I kindly invited you to have a drink, but I made a mistake. What kind of medicine money? If this money goes to his Shi Dalan, will it still be medicine money? Then it's gambling money. My sister and nephew won't be there anyway, so who will spend it or not? In my hands, it got into everyone's stomach, and in his Shi Dalan's hand, you can't hear a sound when you throw it out. Except for that Jian Lang Jun, everyone else laughed and nodded in agreement. They were laughing happily when the faces of the two people sitting opposite the door suddenly changed, and they couldn't smile as if their necks were being pinched. Seeing their faces looking at him in horror, Wu Dalan turned his head. What's wrong? When he turned around, a knife was placed on his neck, and the thin, cold blade pressed against his neck, causing Wu Dalan to shudder. He raised his head tremblingly, and met Uncle Shangshi's icy gaze. He twitched the corners of his mouth, and forced a smile. Sister, brother-in-law, what are you doing? This knife is not a joke, let's get out of the way. He stretched out his hand to push the knife away a little, but Uncle Shi suddenly pressed down, and the people who were staring at them suddenly exclaimed, and everyone said nervously, go out, it's bleeding. Wu Dalan didn't feel anything at first, but after hearing what his friends said, he suddenly felt a pain in his neck. He almost cried, but he didn't dare to move his neck, so he could only deal with Uncle Shi. Brother-in-law, we are a family. What are you doing? If something goes wrong, you will go to jail. Uncle Shi said gloomily, you took away our money. Xiao Lang has no money to treat his illness, and he is about to die. Once he dies, the eldest lady and I will not be able to live. In this case, it is better to pull the uncle before death. Brother, when we go to the underworld, we can be companions together. No, Wu Dalan said hurriedly, I was joking with you. I'm the eldest uncle, how could it be that Xiaolang's medicine money? Isn't it money? You take the knife away first, and I'll take it. Give you. Seeing that he was about to move, Uncle Shi pressed his knife tightly against his neck and said softly, don't move, this knife has been sharpened and is very sharp. If you move it, it will cut the large blood vessel in your neck. Even the gods can't save him. Wu Dalan didn't dare to move. Uncle Shi said, the money I sold the house is 120 taels. No matter how generous the eldest brother is, he can't carry so much money with him, and let someone go back to get it. Live there and let the owner of the house receive the money to tell me, I really did, I let you go, but if you didn't receive it, the two of us will go to the underworld together as companions. Wu Dalin originally wanted to ask his entourage to report to the officials secretly. Hearing this, a chill rose from his spine. He felt that what Uncle Shi said was true. I'm afraid he will really get wiped. So Wu Dalin hurriedly said to Chang Sui, who was staying there, go home to get the money, go directly to the eldest lady to ask for money, don't tell the family about it yet, have you heard? Chen Sui returned to his senses, bowed repeatedly, turned around and ran out. The Wu family has not separated, and Wu Dalin is not very capable, otherwise, he would not have swindled his sister's nephew's life-saving money. If he really told his family, who knew whether his brothers would make trouble, and whether the old man would come to Uncle Shi to have a theory, but instead angered the other party. So Wu Dalin could only repeatedly tell him to only find his wife. Mrs. Wu didn't want to pay attention, they are drinking and playing tricks, I don't believe he really dares to kill. The little servant knelt directly on the ground and cried, the eldest lady doesn't know how terrifying the eldest uncle is now. He is really desperate. If we don't come up with the money, the eldest uncle will really dare to use the knife. Madame Wu's expression changed, she thought for a moment, gritted her teeth and said to the confidant girl beside her, go open the box and get the money. She was very angry, it's really a debt collector. You can't see my share in making money, but you know you're looking for me when you spend money. 120 taels was not light, so he packed a load, and after confirming the logarithm, Chen Sui ran to the other courtyard of the Shi family with the load. Madame Shi was crying while watching her son. She was still a little stunned when she saw the person who was brought in by Zhou Lizhong. How did you get here? Chang Hop came forward, knelt directly on the ground, opened the burden, and kowtowed, Auntie, please click, this is the 120 taels that the uncle took from you before, and now I give it back to you. Madame Shi was stunned for a moment, then she was overwhelmed with surprise, and only then did she feel moved and heard Chang Sui wipe her eyes and say, Auntie, go and beg your uncle. Our uncle has returned all the money, and asked him to be merciful. Lady Stone. In the end, Zhou Lizhong counted the money. Although the money was not the batch given by their Zhou family, the logarithm was enough. Madame Wu was afraid that Uncle Shi really made her a widow, so although she felt distressed, she still took out a sufficient amount of money. Zhou Lizhong and Chang Sui went to the restaurant. The restaurant was already very lively. Everyone gathered in the box to watch Uncle Shi kidnap Wu Dalin, and some people were persuading him, don't think too much. If something happens to you, it will make them orphans and widows even more sad. But Uncle Shi gritted his teeth and said, without money, my son can't live, and so can my wife and I. Wu Dalin really regretted it. He knew that Uncle Shi was so crazy now. After he got the money, he shouldn't stay in the county town. Uncle Shi held the knife in one hand, the other hand went to take the jug on the table, and poured a sip into his mouth. Someone quietly approached. Who knew that Uncle Shi suddenly turned his head to look at him and walked forward. The person who took 2 steps froze. Uncle Shi's knife moved, and Uncle Wu burst into tears. He didn't dare to move and said, don't come near, brother-in-law, they don't dare to move, really, don't be impulsive, don't be impulsive. Zhou Lizhong and his entourage came in, glanced at the blood stain on Wu Dalin's neck, and after a moment of silence, he smiled and said, Uncle Shi, why do you and Uncle Wu like to play this game instead? It's just that Uncle Wu has already let you sell your house. The money is back, Madame Shi is happy at the moment, you should go back and have a look. He took a step forward and held Uncle Shi's hand, pulled it out, and said with a smile, let's go, Xiao Lang is still waiting at home. I thought I had already updated the previous chapter, only to find out that it was not updated at 7 o'clock, and now I will replace it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3134. As soon as the knife was removed, Uncle Wu rushed to the side, far away from them. His hands and feet were too weak to exert any strength, so he simply crawled forward on all fours, and his friends immediately pulled him. Uncle Li Shi far away. Seeing that Uncle Wu was so embarrassed, the crowd laughed. Uncle Wu's face became even redder, and he pointed at Uncle Shi, who was about to scold, when Zhou Lishong stepped forward quickly, grabbed him and said with concern, "Uncle Wu, your neck is bleeding already." Uncle Wu subconsciously reached out and touched his neck. One hand was wet, and when he took it out, there was blood in his palm, and he would faint if he rolled his eyelids. However, Zhou Lishong held his hand and pressed his thumb hard on his tiger's mouth, making him hold on, and he didn't faint. He leaned closer and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, Uncle Wu, this is not an important injury, don't see a lot of blood, it's actually just a cut of the flesh, go to the pharmacy and apply a pack of medicine, and it will scab in 2 days. Yes. It's just." His voice was even lower, and he whispered in his ear, almost no one heard except the two of them, "Why does Uncle Wu compete with people like Uncle Shi? He is a gambler, and he has a family with 4 walls, and he has reached a dead end. If you force him at this time, are you not afraid that he will die? You must know that people who gamble to the point where their family business is ruined are originally desperados." Uncle Wu's expression changed, and he didn't speak. The fox friends standing on the side were a little impatient when they saw them whispering together, and asked, "Brother Wu, are you going to report to the county yamen? Should I send someone to report to the yamen?" The shopkeeper of the restaurant, who had been hiding behind the crowd, was a little anxious. He kept stopping everyone from letting them report to the yamen, because once they reported it, it would be difficult for him to explain, and even the restaurant would be closed for a few days. In his opinion, the two are in-laws, so what can't be discussed? Why bother to fight against each other, and then to the yamen? Wu Dalan quietly glanced at Uncle Shi, and he didn't dare to provoke him. The person in front of him was right. Now Shi Dalan is barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes. Don't report it, let him go. Hu friends and dog friends were stunned for a moment, but they didn't expect him to let Uncle Shi go. Uncle Shi raised his eyes and glanced at them with the knife, then turned and left. Zhou Lishong followed and said to the onlookers, don't watch it, it's just a conflict with my brother-in-law, it's no big deal." When Uncle Shi returned home with the knife in hand, Mrs. Shi had already put away all the money, and Shi Xiaolang only glanced at it and looked away. Whether the money can be kept or not is uncertain. Because of Wu Dalan's deception, Mrs. Shi was also very angry with Uncle Shi at this time. If he asked for money, she would not be able to keep it. Uncle Shi just glanced at the money and turned his head away with difficulty. After a while, he turned around and took out an ingot and stuffed it with his wife, and took out the remaining roll. Madam Shi was stunned for a moment, and quickly chased after her, "What are you doing with so much money?" She is weak, but it does not mean that Uncle Shi can gamble with so much money. Uncle Shi put the money in front of Zhou Lishong and stuffed him with the whole burden. "I will find a house and move out as soon as possible, don't worry, this money." He paused and said, "This money can only be held by you first." He raised his brows and said, "I can't control my mind, and I can't control my hands and feet, that's all I can do." Zhou Li was stunned. "Master Shi believes me." Uncle Shi said with a wry smile, "Of course I believe you, and now the whole county can make me believe in your Zhou family." He said, "I know your sister-in-law, called Man Bao, right? She is a famous person in our county, and she is the 4th-rank official in the county. Except for the concubine of the Bai family, she is the highest official in the county. Although Uncle Shi has been inactive in recent years, he has a good memory. He has ruined his family business, and when he looks back, he will inevitably think of the little lady who always persuaded him to quit gambling. Everyone takes me as a joke this time. Only you are willing to lend a hand. I can trust you and Joe Man's nephew. Joe Lishong didn't want to pick it up, it was very troublesome, but when he saw Mrs. who was leaning against the door and looking at him, he nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll take it for you until you need it. When using it, let Madam Shi come to me and ask for it." Uncle Shi breathed a sigh of relief and nodded immediately. Joe Lishong counted the money in the bag, and simply wrote a receipt to them, indicating that he took over the 112 taels in place of Uncle Shi and his wife. Whether it is grandma, her mother, or a sister-in-law, anyone who encounters difficulties is willing to help. It is just a little trouble, it takes some energy, and there is no big loss. If he is unwilling to help, what will he do in the future? What's the big deal? Joe Lishong thought so, and was more willing, handed the receipt to Uncle Shi, and said, "I sent Shi Xiaolang's pulse case and prescription to my aunt to see if my aunt has a good prescription to save him. Uncle Shi, it will take a long time for Shi Xiaolang's illness to be cured, why don't you find some other work first?" He thoughtfully said, "Since you don't want to gamble anymore, then keep yourself busy, sleep when you're tired, and work to earn money when you wake up. Once you're busy, you don't have the heart to think about gambling anymore." Uncle Shi stiffened slightly, shook his head and said, "Unless I chop off both of my hands, I'm afraid I won't be able to change it." For so many years, he kept gambling and losing, and he lost all his family business. Naturally, he also wanted to quit, but every time he quit, he was more eager. The longest time, he did not gamble again for 8 months, and when he felt that he could control himself, for some reason, he followed his friends into the casino again. Then it got out of hand. Madam Shi, who was leaning against the door, twisted her face for a while, staring at his back with resentment on her face. She couldn't help but said viciously, "Then cut off your hand." Joe Lishong. Uncle Shi was silent, looking eagerly at the knife he just threw on the table. Joe Lishong was taken aback, and quickly said, "It's not like this, it's just gambling, it's not that hard to quit, right? Why don't you go to open up wasteland? When my fourth uncle was fined for gambling money, he was punished to open up wasteland, and he went out every day when it was bright, the sky was fast. He didn't come back until it got dark, and when he came back, he was directly paralyzed, let alone gambling, he didn't even think about what to eat or drink." Madam Shi said with a numb expression, "He can't change it, how many years have passed, every time he changed it, someone would lead him to gamble. If I said, all his friends should be killed, they are all dead, maybe he can fix it?" Joe Lishong was startled by her heavy resentment, and was speechless for a long time. Uncle Shi was also silent. It was quiet for a while inside and outside the house. Mrs. Shi was the first to come back to her senses. She stepped forward and spread out the silver in her hand, saying, 10 taels are too many, Zhou Lang Jun, please exchange them for 50 taels, and the 5 taels are also please. Take it. This is because Uncle Shi can't help but take money from her because of his gambling addiction. Jolie gave Uncle Shi a heavy look and nodded. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3135. Zhou Lishong's letter was not directly sent to Qingzhou, because he knew that it was too far from Lujiang County to Qingzhou. So he directly sent someone to Zhou's house in the capital, and then his family followed him to Qingzhou. He knew that someone from the capital sent letters to Qingzhou every month, either this or that. And if he remembered correctly, the sister-in-law and the princess are about to give birth, and during this period of time, the things sent to Qingzhou will only be more, not less. Jolie re-guessed it well. His letter had just arrived in the capital with the front foot of the letter, and someone from the imperial palace on the back foot, and asked, "The palace wants to send something to the princess, and the maiden asked me to come over and ask if the palace needs to carry it with me. Things from the past? Pack them up and send them together tomorrow. When the Zhou family and the Bai family heard it, they immediately responded, and immediately packed a lot of things and handed them over to the servants. He stuffed another handful of copper coins into the waiter. Even though it was just a handful of copper coins, the maid was happy enough, accepted it with a smile, carried several bags into the palace, and sent them to Qingzhou together the next day. Along with the group of maids in the palace, Zhenggu and 2 female students from the Imperial Physician Department who just graduated this year. They brought their family members to Qingzhou to work together. They met this group of people in the palace on the way. Because they were all public officials, they simply went together. 10 days later, the group arrived in Qingzhou at the same time, and the maids did not stop and went directly to Bihai County. Zhenggu took 2 junior sisters to the Qingzhou medical office to find Wen Tiandong. When Tiandong was relieved to see them, tears were about to come out. He stepped forward and grabbed Zhenggu's hand and said, "Brother Zheng, if you don't come, I won't be able to hold it anymore. It's too busy." Zhenggu and Wen Tiandong were students who started in the same year, but later Zhenggu was admitted to another class because of his good foundation, graduating 1 year earlier than them. So when they meet again, they have always been called brothers and sisters. Zhenggu glanced at the Qingzhou medical office, nodded and said, "It looks pretty neat, and there are not many patients. Why are you crying?" "This is because it's noon, and all the patients have taken their numbers to eat," Wen Tiandong said, "and Qingzhou does not only have 1 medical office, but 2. The teacher also asked people to prepare a house in Changsha County. Just waiting for us to spare time, we will also open the medical office over there. Do you think I am busy? By the way, the teacher's day is coming. She has started to rest now. The medical offices on both sides need me to run. Fortunately, there are 3 mature apprentices there, otherwise I will be even busier. But even so, some things cannot be left to apprentices, so Wen Tiandong is even busier." Zhenggu understood and said to him, "We have to go to Bihai County to see master first." Wen Tiandong said with a look of regret, "I can't go away, you go." His eyes turned to the 2 little ladies behind him, his eyes lit up, these 2 junior sisters. "We are also going to see the teacher," the 2 little ladies said immediately. Wen Tiandong could only look at them with regret and sadness. The 2 little ladies, one named Cao Yuxuan and the other named Wei Man, are both female students who just graduated this year. They have defeated many talents to win the opportunity to come to Qingzhou. They have also studied with Zhou Man for 3 years. Among the many teachers in the Imperial Physician Office, their favorite is Zhou Man. Moreover, she is the target of all the female students in the Imperial Physician Office. Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man not only want to be an imperial physician like Zhou Man, but also want to be the editor of the Chongguan Museum, able to discuss politics in the body of a woman. Since he came to Qingzhou, the most important thing was to see Zhou Man. Zhenggu also acted neatly. After seeing Wen Tiandong, he turned around and took people to Bihai County. The servants had already arrived ahead of schedule, and they were constantly moving things down from the car. Most of them were for Princess Mingda, and only a few were for Zhou Man and Yin Or. Bai Shan joins in the fun, looking at it and thinking it's not right. "It's okay if there's no Bai Er, why don't I have one?" "Bai Er, what do you mean if you don't have me? I don't even have it. I want to be a father. Why do you have it?" Zhou Man opened a box, which contained a stack of letters, and the top one was Zhou Lishong's letter. She opened it and was surprised. Seeing that her face was different, Bai Shan stepped forward and asked, "What's wrong? Do you still remember the very generous Uncle Shi in our county?" Bai Shan tilted his head for a while and nodded, "Remember, my wish when I was a child was to be him." "Me too," Bai Erlang also said. Seeing that both Mingda and Yin He were looking at him curiously, Bai Erlang explained, this Uncle Shi is very nice, although we rarely go to the city, but every time we go, as long as we meet him, he will invite us to eat, or a visit to the city. A candied haws, or a piece of maltose, or a steamed bun. Sometimes when he wins a cockfight, if he is happy, he will let people send us big meat from the restaurant. Mingda, did you have a hard time as a child? Bai Erlang said, it's not bitter, but how can the meat at home be compared to the meat outside? He said, the meat outside is especially delicious. Joe Man, especially if someone else invited me. Minda and Yin or. The two were curious and asked, then what? His family is very rich, Bai Erlang recalled for a moment, but found that he didn't have a lot of impressions. I only remember that he was the only son in the family. He could have anything he wanted since he was a child. The family never couldn't help him spend money. Even if he mentions it now, he still looks eager. We had to run Zhuangzi to make money back then. Unlike him, we spent as much as we wanted, and he lived in the city, we lived in the country, only when we were in the middle of the night. Into the city. So at that time, the three of them made a wish to buy a yard in the county town in the future, so that they could go shopping and eat delicious food every day. Unfortunately, they did not go to the county town to buy a house to live in the end, but went directly to Yizhu city. Although they did not buy a house, their wish came true. Joe Man said indifferently, now he has gambled away his family business and sold the last yard. Now he is homeless. After saying that, he looked at Bai Erlang coldly. Bai Erlang shuddered under her gaze and stammered, look at what I do, I don't gamble. Bai Shan asked, what's wrong with him now? Joe Man put away the letter, unfolded the 2 sheets of paper at the back, and said, it's not him, it's his son, who is ill and has never been cured. She looked at the pulse case, frowned slightly, this is. Bai Erlang probed curiously, what is it? Yang deficiency and heart failure. Joe Man frowned, this disease is not easy to cure. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 3136. Zhenggu and the others only arrived in the evening and went directly to the county office. Joe Man was already immersed in Shi Xialang's pulse, and was not at all interested in the sudden noise in front of the county office. It was Julan who happily ran over and said, Miss, Master Zheng is here. Joe Man's mind was still on the information he had just printed out. Hearing this, he raised his head and looked confused, who? Zhenggu, young Master Zheng. Because Zhenggu and a few were disciples of Joe Man, the servants were different from them, and they were all called young masters and ladies. Only then did Joe Man return to his senses, and he quickly asked, did he come alone? Where is he? Let him come in. Julan responded with a smile, then turned around and went to invite someone. The Lord is entertaining, I'll go invite someone over now. As soon as the people left, Joe Man hurriedly threw the information in his hand into Keek's space. This was the information about heart failure that teacher Mo found for her. Love to print it out and see. Although points need to be spent, but this point is still willing to pay when the points are full. She put away all the things that would be exposed on the table, and then she stood up with her waist. Zhenggu strode over with his 2 junior sisters, and when he saw Joe Man standing at the door, he immediately lifted up his robe and knelt down. The students pay their respects to the master. Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man were stunned for a moment, and hurriedly knelt down to salute. Joe Man was already happy to help them. Get up, where did this come from? Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man were pulled, unable to kneel down, so they could only curtsy. There are a lot of things to say when the master and apprentice meet, but with Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man there, it's hard to ask a lot of things. Joe Man can only first introduce the situation of Qingzhou Medical Office, and then look at Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man with the eyes of Jin Zi. I specifically ask Xiao Yuan to send more female students here, but Xiao Yuan said that women doctors are the most lacking in all places, so they can't give it to me. I thought it would be gone this time, but I didn't expect to send you all. It's a great surprise for the two to come here. Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man bowed their heads embarrassedly. Zhou Mandao, you guys came just right, I'm about to give birth, and I can't sit in the hall for a short time. Some female patients don't want to see a male doctor. When they come to see only a male doctor, they turn their heads and leave. With you, I don't worry about the situation changing. Broken. Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man looked at each other, bowed their heads and said, the students listen to the teacher. Zhou Man nodded slightly and said to the two of them, let's discuss it later. One stays in Bihai County and the other goes to Qingzhou City. Both medical offices need a female doctor. Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man's eyes widened. They thought they would follow Zhou Man after they came, but they would be separated as soon as they came, and they would have to take office and sit directly in the hall. Both were a little nervous, and the two of them looked at each other, and they both raised their fighting spirit. Teacher, do you think it's better for us to stay in Bihai County? Both of them stared at Zhou Man with piercing eyes. Neither of them wanted to go to Qingzhou City. The reason why they rushed to Qingzhou was because they wanted to learn more from Zhou Man's side, and now everyone in the Imperial Physician Office knew that Qingzhou was the place where the Imperial Physician's Office was tested, and its status was unusual. Zhou Man seemed to know what they were worrying about, and said, whether it is Qingzhou City or Bihai County, I am an order, and I will transfer between the two places. You can learn something from me no matter where you are. How is that? The two of them thought that Mr. Bai was the magistrate in Bihai County, and the teacher lived in Bihai County. He must have been in Bihai County for a longer time, and he was closer to the water tower here. Seeing that they were not giving in to each other, Zhou Man simply said, then let's cast lots. Both were taken aback. Zhou Man has turned his head and said to Zhenggu, go and write 2 pieces of paper, and a few more empty balls of paper. Zhenggu went to write. He cut a piece of paper into 5 pieces, and wrote Bihai County and Qingzhou City on 2 of them. The remaining 3 pieces were rounded up, put together, and handed over to Zhou Man. Zhou Man took it, closed his hand and shook it, opened it, and spread it on the table. Very good, now even Zhenggu who wrote the group himself can't tell the difference. Catch it? The two looked at each other, reached out and grabbed one, opened it, and luckily, they were all empty. The two became even more nervous, and even Zhou Man and Zhenggu watched with great interest. The two of them reached out and grabbed one at the same time, and then looked at each other. They knew that this time the outcome was decided, and the paper balls in the hands of the two must have words on one of their hands. Both of them slowly opened the paper ball. Wei Man was speechless for a while. Cao Yuxuan looked nervous at the empty paper ball in her hand, then stared at Wei Man. Wei Man glanced at her, turned the note in his hand towards her, and sighed, Qingzhou City, I lost. Zhou Man reached out and opened the remaining paper balls on the table to show them, with 3 small characters on it, Bihai County. She smiled and said, okay, then this matter is settled as it is. It's very late today, everyone stay here first, and tomorrow I will take you to see the medical office. Wei Man, although you are going to the medical office in Qingzhou City, but it is the first time for you to sit in the hall and you have no experience, so you have to stay here to study for a period of time. It does not need to be long, about half a month is enough. Wei Man hurriedly said, it will be fine after a while. Zhou Man shook his head and laughed. Wen Tiandong would be sad if he knew. Both of them bowed their heads and smiled embarrassedly. By the way, did you come by yourself, or did you bring your family? Wei Man hurriedly said, my brother and sister-in-law came with me. They came to take care of me. Cao Yuxuan was followed by her parents. The family background of the two of them is okay, and they have studied with their father and brother since childhood, so they can skip the stage of literacy and start studying medicine. As for female students who are not literate, they have to spend 2 to 3 years recognizing their characters after entering the imperial physician office. Now, the imperial physician's office is becoming more and more subdivided, and more classes are offered. Some of them start school at the age of 7 or 8, completely from childhood. The imperial physician's office has also relaxed the requirements for these students. The original 8-year school system has been changed to 10 years. After 10 years, if they fail to pass the qualifications, they will not be able to graduate, and they will not be able to study again. Work. Being an apprentice is very tiring, the wages are low, and there is no status. Therefore, those who can graduate can also be assigned to Qingzhou, which shows the ability of the two. At the same time, their family also valued them very much. In the past, the family put the hope of honoring their ancestors on their brothers, but now they have transferred some of them to them. Therefore, they can also get the support and help of the family just like their father and brother are officials. Their parents and siblings came to help take care of them. Zhou Man nodded and said to the two of them, "There are several rooms in the courtyard behind the medical office. They are all reserved for doctors and their families. You can live in them." He turned his head to Zhenggu and said, "I don't have your share. You can only rent a house outside." Zhenggu, yes. Good night. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3137. When Cao Yuxuan and Wei Man settled down, Zhou Man looked at Zhenggu. "You came alone?" "No, and my wife." Zhou Man nodded. "I have the guest room cleaned up. You don't stay at the inn, stay at home." Zhenggu responded with a smile, and then Zhou Man asked, "Is everything okay over there in the capital?" Zhenggu said, "When I came out, the Imperial Physician Office had already selected a place in Yangzhou to build a pharmacy, and the East Palace allocated a piece of land in Huangzhuang to build a pharmacy. The distance between the two places is not very far. It means that after graduation, pharmacy students can choose to go to local medical offices to make prescriptions. They can also go to the pharmacy of the Imperial Physician Department, or they can go to the pharmacy of the East Palace." Zhou Man tilted his head in confusion. "Is the pharmacy owned by the East Palace? Isn't it the royal family?" Zhenggu smiled slightly and said, "When my uncle said that the pharmacy was about to open, several princes and princesses came to your Majesty's presence, and they all took this errand. Your Majesty was embarrassed and couldn't make a decision for a while, so he just pretended to be deaf and dumb and pushed him to do it. I don't know about this, it was all done by the Crown Prince alone, so now the pharmacy is under the name of the East Palace." "That's true, but all the ministers in the DPRK and the royal family know that it was His Majesty's intention," Zhenggu said. "Penicillin is very valuable. Now this medicine is not easy to produce, and sometimes the pharmacists do not handle it well. The furnace medicine is completely destroyed. In addition to the military, the hospital will always keep some in case of emergency." He said, "But you also said that this medicine is not suitable for some people, so we will not prescribe such medicine unless we have to. Some adults, especially the generals who will go to the battlefield, always want to take some with them. Therefore, I have been trying to find a way to buy it, and the price of the medicine in private has skyrocketed, almost the same price as ginseng. But ginseng takes decades, hundreds of years to plant, and people need to discover and dig. If nothing else, the cost of time alone is not low, so its high price is a matter of course. Penicillin. The cost of this thing is far less than that of ginseng, and the price paid by the Taiyuan hospital to the military is not very high. After all, it is intended for ordinary soldiers to use it. But this thing turned one hand and two hands, and it turned out to be a sky-high price. Interests are moving, so many people want to get their hands on it. The pharmacies of the Imperial Physician Department are operated by themselves, and the pharmacists are their own students and apprentices. The sales can also be directly connected with the Ministry of War, local medical offices and pharmacies in medical halls, and there is no need for outsiders at all. So everyone is staring at the pharmacy under the prince's hands. Besides the pharmacy, its master's book, Zhenggu did not have the qualifications to go to the court, so he still listened to what his uncle said, and Zhou Man's book caused an uproar in the court. There were discussions in the Imperial Medical Office and the Imperial Hospital, so it's not hard for him to know. Most of the courtiers in the DPRK agree with your suggestion, Master. The medical offices of various states provide products and govern the medical offices of each county, but some people object, Zhenggu said. The supporters think that with the pharmacy, in the future the Imperial Medical Office will be able to, with continuous revenue and the support of the National Treasury and His Majesty's Internal Treasury, the Imperial Physician's Office can continue for a long time. People who oppose it think that this is not a long-term solution. The cost of the local medical office is too high, and it is inevitable that some people will forge household registration in order to deceive doctors in the future, or even change from household to household, and from household to household. Zhou Man twitched the corners of his mouth and asked with a snort, how did Xiao Yuanzheng respond to them? Xiao Yuanzheng couldn't speak at all, and they were quarreling with each other. Zhou Man snorted, next time you write to Xiao Yuanzheng, remember to tell him that if someone else says that, you can ask him to ask if the officials in the county government, as well as the censor terrace, Dali Temple are all vegetarians. Is it? If you change from the upper household to the lower household, you will catch one if you come, and if you come with a pair, you will find the other pair, so that you can really change from the upper household to the lower household. See if they are still cheating? Zhenggu scratched his head, Master, you are about to give birth, so don't be angry. I'm not angry, Zhou Man waved and asked, is there any more? Zhenggu hesitated for a moment and then said, Master Wei is sick, but before I came, he was already able to go to court. I saw his face, and it was a little bad. I asked my uncle, but he didn't allow me to ask. We also took the pulse case of Lord Wei, and no one is allowed to check it. He remembered that Master and Master Wei had a good relationship. Master Wei was also the one who strongly supported the delivery of the product by the local medical office, so he felt that he should tell Master. Zhou Man was stunned for a moment, then fell silent. Wei Ji's health was very bad. If it wasn't for the pills she gave, she probably wouldn't have survived the Battle of Liaodong the year before. Seeing her silence, Zhenggu also fell silent. After a while, she returned to her senses and asked, is there any more? Zhenggu smiled and said, the rest is our personal business. Master, Xiao Yuan is sending the third junior brother to the pharmacy. If there is no accident, he will be in charge of the pharmacy in the future. Zhou Man was surprised. Zheng Xiao is young and has only been practicing for 2 years, so Xiao Yuanzheng can rest assured. He smiled and nodded and said, he's a little worse at diagnosing and prescribing pulses, but he has a much deeper understanding of medicines than we do. His penicillin has the highest success rate, and we've tested it, and the effect is also the best. The most stable, so Xiao Yuanzheng chose him. Zhou Man nodded slightly. When he was in the Imperial Physician's office, he studied pharmacy the best, and he made better medicines than you. Zhou Man asked, where are Li Ru and Sun Yang? How are they? They are so good. Now there are quite a few female doctors in Beijing, and a batch of them graduated last year. In addition to a few in the Taiyuan Hospital, there are also 2 female doctors in the Chang'an County Medical Office, but because Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru are Zhou Man's disciples, the 2 of them are more some welcome. Facts have also proved that their medical skills are better. Therefore, the female relatives of wealthy and powerful families in Beijing like to invite them when they are sick. If you are qualified, you can ask them from the Imperial Hospital, which is fast and cheap. If you are not qualified, you can ask them in private. Zheng Gu remembered the lively scene when he saw each family come to invite them in the Imperial Hospital last time, and sighed, compared to our male imperial physicians, it is too popular. Zhou Man nodded with satisfaction. What she feared most was that female doctors would be excluded from the capital, and it would be difficult to recruit female disciples in the imperial physician office. The master and the apprentice talked for a long time, and waited for the outside call before they went to have dinner, and then Zheng Gu asked people to take out the things that the families in the capital entrusted him to bring. Zhou Man was taken aback for a moment. Strange, didn't the family just ask someone from the palace to bring me something? Why is there still here? Zheng Gu thought for a while and said, I was going to tell them 10 days before going out, that the things I got 2 days in advance. The people in the palace went later than us, it was a temporary departure, we just met on the road and left together, maybe that was cleaned up later. Zhou Man asked people to open it to see what the box was, and found that it was all kinds of children's small clothes, small shoes, and even half a box of diapers. She was stunned. I see, it really took time to prepare carefully. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 3138. Bai Shan took out a long cloth towel, looked back and forth, and asked in confusion, what is this for? Take a shower. Xiao Qian hurriedly took it, folded it, and said, this is for the child to wrap and wipe his body after taking a bath. She said, it's still cold now. It will take a long time for Man Bao to give birth. It will take a long time to heat up. You have to wrap it up when you get out of the water, or it will be cold when the wind blows. Zhou Man was also surprised. She didn't look at newborns less often, but she never wore them with her hands. At most, she would join in the fun and give some advice from the doctor's point of view. Where can I get these small details? Is that one enough? Shouldn't it be changed or washed? Zheng Shi also found a lot of good things. Wen Yan smiled and said to her, you don't have to worry, your sister-in-law and I have prepared these, we have prepared 3 such cloth towels, the colors are different, and we will see when the time comes. We will use whichever one the child likes. Zhou Man said wow and asked curiously, what colors are there? They were talking lively when the door of the courtyard was pushed open with a bang, and a guard ran in and said, Master Zhou, the princess has a stomachache and is about to give birth. Zhou Man's eyes lit up, and he turned to go, can you send someone to call Granny Wen? Someone has gone. Xiao Qian was startled, and grabbed her and said, you're about to give birth yourself, so why don't you go? Zhou Man smiled and reassured her, sister-in-law, don't worry, other pregnant women can't go to give birth because she's scared, but I've delivered so many children, and I've even done open belly extraction, so I won't be scared. The little Qian Shi only let go, but instead he supported her, I'll go take a look with you. Zheng Shi was anxious for a while, and quickly said, I will go too. Bai Shan has already turned his head and said to humanity, go to the inn and invite the 2 female doctors to help. Many people are more powerful. If it is difficult to get started after a week, there are still them who can use it. The servants responded and ran towards the station. The 2 families live not far away, Zhou Man will arrive soon, Yin or lives next door, so he has already arrived. At this time, he is sitting in the living room drinking tea. Bai Erlang is anxiously turning around, but Princess Mingda's expression has not changed. Sitting on a chair beside him eating noodles. Bai Shan and Xiao Qian helped Zhou Man in, and when they saw this scene, they couldn't help but look at Bai Erlang, who was anxious. Didn't you say you're going to give birth? It's not going to be you, right? Bai Erlang wiped off the sweat on his head and said, Mingda has a stomachache. Mammy said she was about to give birth, but she wasn't in a hurry. Yin he took a slow sip of tea and said, it's all just labor pains, and it's still a long time before delivery. Bai Shan asked him with a smile, then why did you come here? Yin he sighed, he screamed so miserably, I was startled when I heard it next door, I hurried over to see it, and then he pulled me and wouldn't let me go. Mingda put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, pursed his lips, and said apologetically, I scared you all. Zhou Man sat down and asked her, does it still hurt? Actually, it still hurts a bit, but it's not too serious and can be tolerated. Zhou Man exhaled, then there should be some waiting, let them clean up the room, I'll stay here at night. She still felt her pulse, and then felt her stomach. After confirming that it was just labor pains, she felt relieved, so she said to the palace ladies, pay more attention at night, and if the amniotic fluid breaks, call me quickly. Yes. At night, everyone simply lived here. Bai Erlang was the most restless. He slept on the couch at night, and he got up every half an hour and went into the room to take a look. Mingda had been so disturbed by the labor that she didn't want to sleep, but now she couldn't sleep anymore, and the two of them stared at each other. Bai Shan's and Zhou Man slept in the guest room. She could only sleep on her side now, but her back also hurt. Bai Shan pressed her button and coaxed softly, go to sleep, you may have to get up early tomorrow, but you can't sleep. Zhou Man slowly fell asleep under his soft soothing. After she slept until the middle of the night, she gently got up to go to the convenience. Bai Shan woke up suddenly, got up and supported her and said, this is not home, I will light the lamp, you wait a minute so you don't bump into something. It was still a little cold at night. When Zhou Man came out with his clothes on, Bai Shan leaned against the screen and almost fell asleep. He stumbled and helped Zhou Man to go back, and then walked to the bed. Suddenly, Duan made a noise in the silence. Both of them were startled and almost fell on the bed. Bai Shan squeezed Zhou Man's arm tightly with both hands, which prevented her from leaning back. It was quiet for a moment, and then all kinds of voices got up, some were kneeling to plead guilty, some were shouting and scolding, and some people were running here. Zhou Man guessed it as soon as he heard the news, and hurriedly said, maybe Mingda is about to give birth. Bai Shan picked up the coat and put it on for her. After the two got dressed, they heard Julan and Zibing say outside, Lord, lady, there is someone from the princess. Bai Shan opened the door and helped Man Bao go out, go and prepare a cup of warm water, the lady needs to warm your stomach, and let the people in the kitchen prepare some pasta and porridge. Julan responded and hurriedly went, while Zibing helped Zhou Man to the main courtyard. Granny Wen had already arrived, and when she saw Zhou Man, she said, the amniotic fluid has broken, and she is about to give birth. Bai Erlang stood aside and probed his brain, swallowed nervously and asked, is it serious? No, did I mean smooth? It's not right. He hit his mouth and asked again, are you going to give birth now? Mingda was in severe pain, and reluctantly turned his head to look at him, and instructed the palace maid, let him go out. When Mammy heard it, she immediately reached out and pushed him out. Zhou Man took a look and reassured her, no hurry, let's take your time. Then someone brought the needle bag, she gave her painkillers, and gossip with her, why kick him out? It's so ugly, I don't want him to see it. Zhou Man smiled, turned his head and said to the palace maid, close the window outside, so that he won't probe his brain outside. The palace maid went, breaking Bai Erlang's last path. Zhou Man got the needle, and when she felt less pain, she closed the needle. At this time, her cervix was also opened, so she took a step back and let Madame Wen come forward. Granny Wen stepped forward to take a look and said, ouch, princess, don't be nervous, this tension will make the previous pain in vain, take it easy, take it easy. Mingda looked at Zhou Man in a panic, with hope in his eyes. Mammy and the maid of the palace were also anxious. I'm coming. Joe Man leaned forward on his waist and asked Wenpo to step back. Seeing that her amniotic fluid was already decreasing, Joe Man pressed her on her body a few times, causing her to cry out in pain, but her body quickly moved. Relax. Joe Man reassured her again, don't be afraid, I'm right here, come, just take a deep breath as we practiced in private before. Hold your breath, push hard, yes, sink. Joe Man kept watching and encouraged her, very good, you are the smartest, you used your strength right, let's do it again. I saw the baby's head coming, you see I'm not wrong, your fetal position is very positive, let's do it again. Joe Man supported the child with his hands and slowly helped the child out. She said happily, it's born.